tell you somebody can answer that. Deputy Leader of Reform, MP for Boston and Skegness. We say a very good afternoon to the legend that is Richard Tice. How are you, Richard?
Very good afternoon. We're alive and well, despite all the madness going on in the world.
I don't know where to start. I'm going to start slightly differently. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm going to start by giving you a lovely present I received today. This is highlights from my first 100 days by Kemi Badenoch. I don't know if you've seen this. And inside, Richard, it's really interesting because there's absolutely bugger all written because she's achieved absolutely nothing. And that's perfect for a long holiday and a real page-turner. Reform UK. So there you are. That was a lovely little thing. Nate, on a serious note, and I'd love somebody who's high up in the party to tell the viewers and listeners. There seems to have been a lot said recently about the only way to stop the left is for Reform and the Tories. Hear me out. Very little from Reform, in fact, nothing, but loads from the Tories, culminating in Badenoch today saying, a deal with Farage is for the birds. Now, I would respect anybody if they came out and spoke the truth, but what I believe she is mistakenly still thinking is that they are so up themselves, the Tory party, that they think that if we just have a couple more years of this nightmare Labour government, the good old British people will go, yeah, time for the other side, let's get the Tories back in, we've forgiven and forgotten. But the truth is it not? The British people show no signs of forgiving and forgetting, and in fact, they need to be very careful, these other politicians, if they make the mistake of just assuming that Reform is a passing ship in the night, because facts and figures would say that your party's here to stay, Richard Tice.
We're very much here to stay, and there was another YouGov poll out in the last 24 hours that put us for the second week running, I think, in first place. I think the Tories were sort of 5% behind us. And what actually is happening is that competition's a good thing. We've got momentum, and we're going up in the polls, and the Tories are slipping in the polls. And that's because, as you say, first of all, people won't forgive or forget the damage that the Tories did to our country with mass immigration, with not doing Brexit properly, with raising taxes, raising grotesque, wasteful government spending like the £100 million back shed. And then, I'm serious, yes, I'll come back to that if you want to, but it might get rude. And then they're saying that our policies, actually, the common sense policies that can make people better off, that can get rid of the daft lunacy of net stupid zero. The only net zero we want is net zero immigration. And people trust us because actually we've got a track record of achieving and doing things.
Do they trust you, or is it really, and I'm not being disrespectful in any way, hear me out, because I haven't started the question the right way. Is there finally in this country, we've argued, many people have argued for many years that this two-party system does nobody any favours because it's up and down, and anything that gets created gets taken back. You only have to look at Trump. On day one, reversing everything that Biden did on day one, who'd reversed everything that he did on day one. What I'm saying is, I suspect that Reform is also benefiting from an apathy or just a general frustration amongst the British people, which is that very thing, up and down and up and time. There might only be 5 Reform MPs. It might be a new party. There might be defections from other parties. There might be work to be done. But I get the feeling the British people are saying, what could be worse? Why not give these people a chance to prove that they could do a better job? That's the feeling you get if you sit here every day.
Well, it couldn't be worse than people getting poorer year after year, the quality of public services getting poorer, our energy bills going ever higher. And I think quite rightly, people are saying, actually, these people, thank heavens they present a real alternative option. And that's good for more debate, more discussion, as I said before. And actually, you don't have to like someone to do business with them.
Nope.
And in the same way, many people voted for Donald Trump who may not have liked him as an individual personality, but they did rightly conclude he'd make the world a safer place and he'd make people better off.
Dennis in Manchester says that much as he's listened to Nigel Farage say, you know, we were let down by the Tories, by Boris Johnson in 2019 after our support. You've made the same point as well. Dennis in Manchester saying, in his mind, he's a Reform voter, but he doesn't believe that there is a way to stop a second 5-year term for Starmer and his friends unless the right somehow amalgamates. Your response to that, Richard?
Well, look, what will happen over the next few years is that I think we will keep going up in the polls. I think, sadly, the country's in for a difficult economic time. I think Labour will slip in the polls. And I think people will rapidly realise if you want to stop Labour, when the Tories in some polls now are slipping below 20%, actually a Tory vote is a wasted vote. A Tory vote becomes the vote that splits the non-Labour vote. And people will say, well, I need to place my vote in order to make sure in my constituency I get Labour out. It's the reverse of what happened at the last election last July, where so many people voted on the basis of who's going to get the Tories out. Never underestimate the good common sense of the British voter.
Yeah.
And so I think and people are getting sort of very excised about this. Regrettably, there is still a long way to go, give or take 4 years. And all sorts of interesting things will happen. But a lot of this story over the weekend, frankly, was made up twaddle and nonsense. We put out a press statement dismissing it as such. I think the Mail on Sunday was either trying to fill some pages or they'd had a bit of a love-in with Boris. I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. Look, it's irrelevant. We're just going to focus on doing what we do well. There'll be more news out in the next couple of days, which I think people will find very interesting with regard to net stupid zero, and we'll just push on and we'll just keep telling it as it is, and people will say, wow, these people are deadly serious.
So you wouldn't take Boris Johnson at all?
Definitely not. Absolutely not.
This story came out whilst we were on air. Please take a deep breath. I'm sure you know about it, and I'll tell from your eyes and the way you look down if you don't. And we've heard over the last 24 hours stories that, you know, I don't think we should laugh at. I think it's an embarrassment to this country if we can say to, you know, to some man who's committed a heinous crime, it's OK, we'll pay for you to find a lawyer and we'll get him to use some ridiculous law in front of a judge, and you can actually stay in this country because your son doesn't like chicken nuggets from Albania. Today we discover a Pakistani paedophile escaped deportation, Richard Tice, because it would harm his children's psychological impact. Let's forget the children he's raped, yeah? An illegal migrant today staying in the country because she claimed that her husband would be too hot going to the Caribbean. You're a pensioner listening to that who's freezing in their goddamn house and you cannot afford to heat your thing. And you look at that, and is it any wonder the British people are going, what? On the basis of that, though, this is what I want to put to you. We've talked, haven't we, about immigration. He said, I'll stop the boats. The Conservatives wanted Rwanda. We'll hear more from Reform's ideas in the months ahead. From nowhere, yesterday, we had footage of this government, according to their, the Home Office, removing 19,000 illegals since they came to power. Suddenly we've got pictures of a jet, and there's a tunnel, and there's people handcuffed being led up the steps and everything. And then have you heard the news in the last hour or not? I'm sure you have. The deportation flight that was filmed by the Home Office was a private jet that went to an Albanian airport. It cost £1 million, and it only took 47 Albanians. By the way, that deal, I'm not complimenting Sunak, but we remember the optics, him against the very tall man. That was an Albanian agreement. 47 Albanians, convicted criminals, on their way home on a private jet that takes 220 people. Do you know how much that cost the British taxpayer, Richard Tice? £1 million, £22,000 per deportee. And you wonder why this country wants change. Mate, that's ludicrous.
Hey, you and I are in the wrong business. I think you and I, we should go into the charter aviation business and start chartering aircraft.
I've got a mate who's
we'd make some good money.
I've got a mate who's got a business that deals with car parts. We should get a couple of jets. Honestly, though, how bad does that look to people who are struggling?
Do you know, I'm going to take the optimistic line that actually 47 criminal migrants from Albania, I'm glad they're now in Albania rather than in the United Kingdom. So let's view that as an optimistic scenario. What I really want to know, though, is the pace of future deportations. And we should be told where these people are taking, in the same way that when people are arrested for crimes, we should be told the nationality of foreign criminal offenders, so we can see which countries actually have people coming here who've got a slightly dodgy record. What are the percentage of wrong-uns? So we can draw our own conclusions about a smart immigration policy.
I would never compliment Sunak, but he did do a deal with the Albanians because there was some research, I guess it would be a couple of years ago now, I think we might have talked about this, and something like 12,000, a real high percentage of male convicted criminals in our prisons were Albanians. So they did the deal and that started to happen, which always begged the question to me, why didn't the Tory government, why doesn't this government make it their aim to make more deals with countries so we can move these people out? Don't get it.
Well, Jeremy, it was my good self that actually broke the story about 4 in 10 of the migrants coming across the channel in 2023, I think it was, were Albanians. That was the first time time anybody had mentioned that, a member of NATO, by the way.
Yeah.
And therefore, the Tories then started to admit that actually there was a problem with Albanian drug dealers and criminals and gangs and modern-day slave traders. So Mr. Sunak doing a deal with Albania was thanks to me, thanks to a whistleblower that came to me with the information. Look, but we just need much more transparency. And I wish the Home Office and this government well in deporting all foreign criminals.
But that,
frankly,
you would agree with me. That's a PR job, Richard. That's just trying to con us. And I'm not into conspiracy theories, but £1 million for a jet to fly home 40... I've got people up in arms saying to me now, why can't they go on a coach? Why can't they go back on a boat? Why can't they go on a Ryanair? Not being just Michael O'Leary. Why can't they go on a budget airline? Why do they have to be flown home in a private jet when old people can't see a doctor? It's not right.
I'll tell you why. Because the last time they tried to do it with 2 or 3 of them on jets with paying passengers, the paying passengers basically created a semi-riot and prevented the plane from taking off until the deportees were being taken off. So I don't think there's an alternative to that, to be absolutely honest. Good point about the coach, but...
cargo plane, cheap plane, stand all the way?
I just take the view, I'd rather they were gone. Yeah. I'd rather a lot more were gone. I'd rather 10,000 were gone from foreign criminals from our prisons. I keep asking the Justice Secretary when that will happen, and she keeps sort of basically evading the question. No surprise there. We just want these people gone. And the sooner they're gone, the sooner the bills come down, the sooner space is free up in our prisons to fill them with other wrong-uns that at the moment can't be put in jail. And so it goes on. But actually, in all seriousness, we just need action. And if this government's getting the message, if they're scared witless of the rise of reform, well, that's good. That shows we're already having an impact on policy and implementation. Good. That's what we're here for.
No, I agree. Now, you talk about action, and I've had so many today, and I'm so glad that you're on, because loads of people have asked me to ask you this. And it, to me, again, it's pretty central to what we talk about most days on this station and on this show. Anybody, really, of any political persuasion has come round to the belief that the blob, the bloated civil service, seemingly has untold power in the political corridors of this country. I mean, I've told the story before about how, whether you're a Rwanda fan or not, we were paying our civil servants salaries from our tax, and then they were using more tax money to go to court to sue a democratically elected government because they didn't like a policy. Astonishing and astounding. Many people saying to me, if Nigel Farage walked up 10 Downing Street in 4 years' time with you by his side, Donald Trump has, on day one, done the things that might be unpopular but that he was voted for. Would reform, thinking about what happened to Liz Truss, would you have the gonads, would you have the desire to get rid of so many members of this blob who, it seems to a lot of us, seem to control so much?
Well, the whole point about the failure of what Liz Truss was trying to do, she was rightly focused on growth, but she didn't focus on cutting the size of the state, cutting the size of wasteful, bloated government spending. And I said it then, I've been talking about it a lot recently. And literally, this civil service, via HS2, has just spent £100 million on a concrete tunnel to protect bats in a wood along HS2, 100 million quid of our cash. And the boss would do it again because he thinks it was the right thing to do. So yes, we would dramatically, the first thing you've got to do is to cut wasteful spending in a really significant way so that people realise you're serious. And that requires, if you've got an electoral mandate, you have to say to the civil service folks, we've got the mandate, we're in charge, either get on with the job that you're instructed to do by us, the elected ministers, or in the nicest possible way, please go and get a job elsewhere before you're fired. Very simple, very clear, everybody knows where they stand. We cannot tolerate this ongoing nonsense. We have to reform the civil service, reform the way that relations operate between ministers and civil servants. Ministers have to be able to fire and hire the right people, and that should include lots of people from the private sector who view it as their civic duty to come across, get stuck in, kick some backsides, and make some stuff happen. If not, Jeremy, this country is going bankrupt.
Completely agree. And one of the things that's obvious to anybody who actually follows this stuff is that, you know, Reform only has 5 MPs and there's plenty of people that say it's rough about the edges, but that's a bunch of people who have had business success. I'm just asking you, what if the system, I mean, you only have to see it already with Trump, that he's being threatened with stuff left, right and centre. What if the system kicks back against Reform? A new government is Reform. We're going to do something about the blob. Do you have the strength to go, I don't care what you throw at me, that's what I was elected for? That's what people want to know, I think.
And I think the simple answer is yes, we do have the strength. I don't think there's anybody stronger with a better track record, with more scars on our back, frankly, than us Reform MPs. And we would be elected on that mandate. It's as simple as that. And if you believe in democracy, then that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And sure, you know, some people are going to whinge and whine and get in their way. Do you know what? We're quite good at suing people. We're quite good at playing the legal game. I would respectfully suggest I'll employ better lawyers than a bunch of trade union members. If they want to take us on, bring it on, pal. We will take them on and we will win. It is as simple as that.
I know you're a very busy man. We've got a big Reform person on the phone. You're right to stay with me for 2 minutes, Richard Tice, yes or no?
Yes.
John, new caller, Hertford. You threw to myself and Richard Tice. What are you going to say, pal?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so I'm begging Richard, please don't do a deal with the Tories. I've been a Tory voter all my life, well, all my voting life, and betrayal is unforgivable. I mean, we gave them chance after chance. It's the boy that cried wolf. We can't believe them anymore. They're toxic. They're just a joke party. If you done a deal with them, you were Reform.
Oh, the line's gone, but I think what he was saying, Richard, was a Tory voter all his life, he's turned to Reform, and he would feel equally betrayed if Reform, trying to get in power or trying to shore up the right, did a deal with the Tories. I think a lot of people feel that strongly, Richard.
And he's quite right. And that's why we've been absolutely clear. We're not doing a deal with the Tories. We're just focusing on doing what we do well, growing our party, growing the branches, and we'll just keep pushing on. Look, it's really hard. No one's saying this stuff's easy.
No.
It shouldn't be easy. But we're just going to push on hard. And I think that people respect that. We've got council elections coming up. We could do, well, we're just going to do as well as we can and stand in as many places as we can. And then we're very excited about the elections next May 26 in Wales and Scotland. I think we're going to surprise a lot of people over the next 15 months.
And also, just before you go, obviously this is a serious point. You are allowed to smile. I think if you feel that you're not getting the response in the House of Commons, perhaps you should, in fact, all 5 of you at some point dress up as a llama, because we now have a health minister who thinks it's OK to identify as a llama. So honestly, mate, is it any wonder politicians that just come on and talk common sense are getting traction? The new health minister thinks it's all right to be, what, just to spit on people and be, I mean, it's ludicrous, Richard Tice.
Well, I don't know if you heard the question from my good friend, fellow MP Lee Anderson earlier in the House of Commons.
What did he say?
Get one of your team to dig it out and play it shortly. But in essence, he basically asked the Health Secretary this afternoon. He said, given that the new health minister thinks that you can present as a llama, he wanted some advice as to if a family member was ill overnight, should he call the doctor, or should he call the vet, or the man with the straitjacket?
And you see, Lee Anderson there is saying what every single person has said for the last 24 hours. Richard, you're a busy man. We really appreciate it. Richard Tice, thank you for coming on. Deputy to Reform UK.